one teeming with revolutionaries and the forces the British government had sent to squash them. I wasn't yet certain from which I was most in danger, but there was a risk from both. Approaching the corner with a narrow alley, I resorted to an old trick. Lowering my worn bag to the pavement, I bent down on one knee, ostensibly to tie a shoelace which had come undone. Under the cover of this gesture, I searched the length of the street in front and behind me for anything suspicious. However, it was empty, save for a gentleman some 200 yards in front of me, already turning the corner into the square. Grasping my bag, I darted into the alley, fairly confident I'd not missed any trick someone trailing me might have employed. The edifices of the Georgian houses were flat, leaving little architectural elements for someone to conceal themselves behind, except for perhaps the odd pillar flanking one of the arched doorways. It seemed probable that a Republican would have carried on toward me with their characteristic audacity, while a British intelligence officer would have resorted to his training, feigning interest in the building architecture or pretending to call at the nearest address. Given the street's desertion, I instead elected to proceed as planned. Tucked away behind the stately townhouses gracing Fitzwilliam Square, the mews revealed the far less auspicious side of these homes. Barely wide enough for a coach, or now a motor car, to pass through, the lane was lined with walls and fences, as well as former carriage houses which, for the most part, had been converted into garages. Though at least one stable must have remained, for I heard the distinctive whicker of a horse somewhere nearby. I knew that behind several of these walls grew impressive floral gardens because I'd spied them from a window above. From the vantage of the mews, the only indications of such were the odd vine allowed to trail over a fence or the periodic whiff of a gardenia carried on the breeze. Otherwise, the surroundings were naught but stolid brick, wood, and dusty cobblestones. Even the slice of blue sky visible above seemed small and meagre. Approaching the T-junction with another lane, I turned to look behind me, for after I carried on from here, I wouldn't be boxed in. The mews ended at exactly the place I didn't wish to lead anyone. Here, once again, the places for concealment were minimal, but I stood watching the entrance to the mews until a motor car passed along the street beyond. Then I turned and lengthened my stride, even though my shoes pinched, intent on reaching my destination. I cast one last glance over my shoulder at the place where the lane made an abrupt right turn, before moving directly toward the next to last gate in the wall, on the left. There I paused, taking a deep breath and issuing myself a stern scolding. I hadn't seen or heard anything to indicate that I was being followed, yet, like the greenest agent, I was allowing my nerves to get the better of me. Here in the mews, no one could see me or my jittery movements, but once I stepped through this gate, I would be exposed to the eyes of anyone who happened to look out from the upper windows of the neighbouring homes. I had to appear exactly as I pretended to be, a care-woman sent to look after the Coxes' house while they were away. Setting my shoulders, I opened the gate and slid through, careful to latch it firmly behind me. Then I walked calmly up the path that bisected the overgrown garden and circumvented the piles of masonry situated to one side of the rear servants' entrance. This area of Dublin was often more sparsely populated during the summer months, the owners and tenants having departed for their country estates or travelling abroad, but with the ongoing unrest and disturbances, it was even more deserted than usual. Many of those who did not need to be in Dublin because of civil obligations had fled to safer climes. The Coxes were just such people, abandoning their Upper Fitzwilliam Street home in the midst of a renovation, which had also ground to a halt. I suppose they didn't see the point in going to the expense of completing the task when the building might be damaged either by Republicans or British forces. Whatever the case, it suited my purposes perfectly. Entering the house, I made my way silently past scullery and kitchen to the staircase. Several of the floorboards groaned loudly when stepped upon, but I'd learned to avoid them. I climbed 3 stories to the uppermost floor. A thick rug muffled my steps as I entered the bedchamber on the left. The heavy drapes inside were pulled tight over the windows, blocking the light from the sun still high in the sky on this June evening. However, I had moved about in the chamber often enough in recent days to navigate the dim interior. I was crossing toward the tapestry hung low across the far wall when something shifted in the shadows to my right. My heart kicked in my chest as I pivoted into a stance to meet my attacker, only to be blinded by the sudden flare of a torch switched on, though I caught enough of a glimpse of the person holding it.